Hey, yous! Throughout most of history, tattoos, body piercings, and cuttings were done primarily as pagan religious rites and expressions. It was also common to tattoo slaves and criminals so they'd be easier to identify if they escaped. In the early 20th century, tattoos in the Western world were almost always on those who did prison time, were vagabonds, or both. An exception were sailors, some who might have just one tattoo of an anchor, ship, mermaid, or such like. Tattooing continued to be frowned upon by polite society. Then in the 1950s, according to famous gay tattooist Samuel Edward, gay communities began embracing tattoos. Mr. Edward was also the official tattoo artist for the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. Then the 1960s hippie movement influenced the culture, so tattoos slowly acquired mainstream acceptance. Unusual piercings and body modification were still frowned upon until around 1990. Now, in their 21st century, around 30% of American adults have at least one tattoo, which is accepted by the majority. In some circles, tattoos are seen as something socially desirable, and those without them as backwards. Now, what type of person do tattoos actually show oneself to be? First, contemplate the 10 people most often considered our world's most intelligent. How many tattoos do they have and how many are tattooed? 0 and 0%, correct? Now consider the 100 people most often considered the most intelligent in the world. How many tattoos and body piercings among them, and what percent are tattooed and or body pierced / modified? 0 and 0%, correct? You may have noticed the prevalence of heavy tattooing among tough guy professional MMA fighters. However, the man most often considered to have been the greatest MMA fighter in history, Fedor Emelianenko, never got a tattoo. Neither did MMA pioneers Royce Gracie or Ken Shamrock. In fact, heavy tattooing may hamper one's athletic performance by interfering with the body's proper regulating of itself through sweating. Macho actors John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, Chuck Norris, Bruce Lee, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, Charles Bronson, Vin Diesel, and others never got a single tattoo. And tattoos are noticeably absent among presidents and heads of state. I do find one or tattoos on either men or women to often be attractive or visually appealing. Yet consider the many bad tattoos people get. Also, all tattoos fade and change shape somewhat over the years, so formerly attractive tattoos can become ugly. I also find earrings or a single nose ring on a woman to be attractive. However, I find tattoo sleeves on women to be ugly, and that tattoos on their legs obliterates their beauty, making them look splotched up. And say there's a gorgeous hot woman, but if she got nipple and genital piercings, then jumped in bed with me, I'd probably jump right out, since I find that mutilation so offensive. Big turn off. Some see tattoos as a type of therapy, as they supposedly initiate a healing process or emotional catharsis by creating visual milestones or by channeling emotions into the tattoos. Yet where's the proof of that? In fact, tattoos sometimes clearly make people feel worse, since highly expensive tattoo removal services are big business. Body alteration can also be a prescription for deadly diseases from tattoo needles and infected piercings, and body alteration is addictive. Dennis Aver, who tattooed, pierced, and modified his body to try to resemble a tiger, committed suicide. Rick Genest, who tattooed his full body to resemble a skull-faced zombie, died aged 32 in a fatal fall while in a drugged stupor. Percentage-wise, tattooed or modified people have higher rates of both suicide and drug addiction than non-tattooed or modified people. As for vegans, know that most tattoos are made from animal products. Although many tattoos seem wholesome, many appear anti-Christian. When I was in school, I knew this nice girl named Renee. A few years back, I got reacquainted with her through Facebook. She was very nice and listed several scripture quotes on her page, was a churchgoer, and her post reflected good values. But later she got divorced and hooked up with a guy named Frank. I strongly objected to Frank for things I felt were red flags, especially his sporting large flame tattoos on his forearms. Renee then blasted me for being judgmental, so I regretted my criticism. Then Renee and Frank married. I kept checking in on Renee's profile. I began to notice that indications of church going became absent, and Renee had posted several photos and sayings of things which seemed anti-Christian. Finally, I found where Renee stated that seeing the Black Veil Brides in concert was on her bucket list, and other posts fawning over the band. Now their frontman, Andy Biersick, has tattoos of an upside-down cross and a pentagram. Andy starred in the ungodly movie American Satan. The band's songs have titles such as Sweet Blasphemy and contain many anti-Christian lyrics, including those which specifically say that they do not look up to Jesus. So I'm vindicated, since my believing that tattoos show bad associations is correct. Tattoos are almost completely absent among Islamic, Jewish, and Christian religious leaders. However, tattoos are somewhat prevalent among neo-pagan, occult, Satanist, and other counterculture religious leaders. Tattoos are also somewhat prevalent among their laity, while among Christian laity, tattoos and body piercings are less common than among the average person. Among Christians, attitudes towards tattoos, piercings, and body modification range from considered totally acceptable to totally unacceptable and portals for demons to enter one's life. Some Christians quote Leviticus 19:28 as a condemnation of tattoos, while other Christians say that Leviticus does not apply to us today. Now, what about wholesome-looking tattoos and so-called Christian tattoos? Images of Jesus, Bible verses, flowers, etc. Quoting James 1:27, pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. Yet tattooed people are literally spotted, blotched, and marked up by something associated with worldly people. Jesus and his disciples never said to show that you're a Christian by wearing words or pictures declaring that. They taught that you should demonstrate your faith by love and godly living. And a major Christian principle is that whatever we have is the Lord's, including our money, and we're to be proper stewards of the Lord's goods. Yet just one tattoo costs over $200, and a heavily covered person would have spent around a year's worth of pay on tattooing and body modification. Besides that, tattoo shops are necessarily ungodly, since they would go out of business if they just created wholesome-looking tattoos. So the money you pay to get a picture of Jesus, Bible verse, Virgin Mary, flower, bluebird, etc., may go to buying ink for tattoos of demons or skulls and flames and all of that. Finally, that those with multiple tattoos are far more likely to have a criminal record is still true, among other implications. In conclusion, nothing good comes from tattooing, unless you're tattooing a pet or farm animal for identification. Actually, getting tattoo sleeves is a lot like falling elbow deep into cow manure. But I'd much rather fall into the cow manure, since it would be free and I could quickly hose it off. And nothing good comes from unnecessary and extravagant body modification of any type. So avoid these practices as something that symbolizes the degeneracy of our culture. Facts.